for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the spot!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. Bittt. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Wednesday, July 12th. It is 1 minute past 10 o'clock. And for all you Montreal sports fans, 17 minutes into the game, the Chicago Fire lead CF Montreal by a score of 2-0, much to the delight of former Montreal Impact coach Frank Klopas, currently coach of the Chicago Fire, and much to the delight of former CF Montreal striker Kai Kamara, and much to the dismay, of course, of CF Montreal and all of their fans. We have one eye on that, but I'm going to have another eye on our collaborator who's going to join us in about a minute or two. But it is the Sick Podcast, and we're live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, and we are live on Twitter. And I thank you all very much for watching. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm Marinaro, brought to you in part by Bittt Tibi, brewed in Quebec, winner of a dozen international awards. Bittt Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. Bittt Tibi, embrace your true nature. The Sick Podcast also brought to you in part by Playground, your premier gaming destination. Playground's Summer Millions must-play poker event of the season, featuring 10 championship ring events, $1 million in guaranteed prize pools, and a $500,000 guaranteed main event located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. It's Playground, brought to you in part also by Energy Transportation Group. This is where I get my energy from. They've been named by the Financial Times as one of America's fastest growing companies in 2023 and have been recognized by the Globe and Mail as a top growing Canadian company for 2 years in a row now. They work with some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies, providing end-to-end logistics services. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. Now, without further ado, I bring him in. What's wrong with my mic? I don't know what is. There we go. Kind of crooked. Why don't I bring him in? Grant McCagg.
Hey.
Former Montreal Canadiens scout in the Bob Gainey administration, founder of Recruits and Recruits.ca, an independent scouting service. Basically, your one-stop shop where Grant McCagg not only has great scouting reports on all draft prospects, but he also has a bunch of feature articles throughout the year, and you get a one-year subscription for less than $40. Grant McCagg, who's also author, by the way, of this. Guardado. Valley Snapshots, notable hockey players from the Upper Ottawa Valley. So, Grant, look at that. Grant McCagg right there. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. This guy does it all. So,
author,
Grant,
Tony, you're talking to an author. So,
yeah, I realized that a long time ago. So, and a scout.
Yeah. In the Gainey administration, you make it, it almost sounds like the Rejaoul administration or something. It's getting ancient.
No. Listen, the Gainey administration wasn't it wasn't a complete disaster. It was a team.
No. Just a long time ago. Now it
was a long time ago. I look back though, and you remember when we were all excited about acquiring Scott Gomez. And then, and then a day or two later, going on this one-day spending spree and signing Brian Jonta as an unrestricted free agent and signing Mike Camilleri. There were a lot of members of the fan base that were really excited about that. And there were some good moments because in 2010, that team eliminated the Washington Capitals in Game 7, Round 1, eliminated the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 7, Round 2, but bowed out to the Philadelphia Flyers, I believe, in 5 games in the third round. But that was a pretty nice run, Grant.
Yeah, that's right. One of the few in the last 30 years, right, Tony?
Yeah. No, it was one of the few.
And I think it was the year out, like that year, if I'm not mistaken, that they signed Gomez, that they, they made the run. And Scotty had that one. He had a not that bad a year that year. And obviously, Giunta and Camilleri was lights out in the playoffs, if I recall. And
Camilleri had 13 goals, did he not, that year?
Yeah. He was on a pace to break Curry and Reggie Leach's mark if they'd made the finals. But just like we saw last year with Draisaitl, he was going to shatter the record if they made the final. And a couple of years before that, Scheifele was on a pace to break it. But you have to do it for 4 rounds, and you rarely see a guy score a lot of goals in the last 2 rounds. It just gets tighter and tighter.
It does. Camilleri was he was so fun to watch that playoff series. He had that, of course, that one-timer where he'd get that one knee to actually almost touch the ice, or probably even touch the ice. Yeah. And he just, when you find a shot that works for you, and it was working for him, man. And he had one of the best one-timers I've seen since covering this team, which has been over 20 years. I think that's fair to say, right? That Camilleri had one of the best one-timers.
Oh, for sure. And Bob, asked me, who should I sign there, Grant, in the offseason? And I said, Camilleri. Bob, that's the... Okay, no, I just made that up because I
was about to ask you if you were serious. I was pretty impressed, but I was pretty impressed. Were you ever asked, Grant, at the time? And I know it was, were you ever asked to be a part of like big meetings, or when you had the scouting meetings, were you there?
No, I was very much part-time,
Yeah.
Got my foot in the door and, just did some regional work basically for Trevor, really. But no, I didn't attend the meetings. So, you can blame me for picking LeBlanc and Tenorti if you like. And
but you didn't.
So, but they certainly weren't. If it had been up to me in 2010, I had Kuznetsov, I think top 10. But I understood. The Canadians were a little gun shy about taking Russians at the time because of the Kostitsyn kind of, those guys like to party a little too much, maybe, or something like that. I don't know what all it was, but so they were a little shy about taking the Russians at the time, and I knew they weren't going to take Kuznetsov, but that certainly would have been, my pick if it had been up to me. But
would have ended up being a good player, and it would have given us no shortage of things to talk about over the past couple of years. I'll tell you that right now.
That's true. And he ended up being a bit of a party animal in Washington too. So who knows apparently there's a few places to go in Montreal too. And it's there's a bit of a nightlife there too, I've been told anyway.
Yeah. No, he would have been right at home over here. That's for sure. Hey, I got you on tonight because there's something that you're going to be writing about. And actually, probably even before it comes out, I think we're probably going to touch on it here. I also know that you had a pretty interesting conversation. Was it earlier today that you had this conversation?
Yeah, I've been privileged to talk to Lane Hutson a few times in the past, and he
nice kid, eh?
Yeah, I touched base with him by text a couple days ago and asked him if he could do an interview, and we chatted for about a half an hour today, and it was nice to get caught up with him.
Oh yeah, on the phone or Zoom call, or how'd you do that?
Yeah, no, on the phone.
Yeah,
and he he's really looking forward to the season. Celebrini, who might be the first overall pick, Macklin Celebrini for the next draft. He's joining.
Talk to me about him, please, if you can. All right.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, just it seems like Chicago Steel are a factory there these days. They had power, and they had, they just had Fantilli.
Yeah.
And now they've got this Celebrini kid who might be better than both of them. Like he's really skilled, really good. So
this is obviously a program that players have identified.
Oh, for sure.
Team, yeah.
Yeah, and but I mean, Willander, who was drafted 11th overall or 12th overall, something like that in the draft here, is joining BU as well, and he's a right defenseman. Lane is left. That might be their top pairing this year, and then they've got the kid that could be the top pick in the draft. Svoboda, who's a really good prospect. I think he went in the 3rd round. So their freshman class is excellent. And then BC has 5 kids, the 3 Perreault, the line from the U18s. Perreault, Smith, and Leonard are all joining Boston College. And they're going to have like one of the best freshman classes in years. So the BC and BU, that rivalry is going to be really renewed this year, and it'll be
the entire line at Boston College. Wow.
Yeah, similar to Minnesota and Michigan the last couple of years with Cooley and Fantilli and all those guys. It's like BU and BC are going to be the new Michigan and Minnesota, and they're going to be fun to watch. And I'm going to make sure, I bet you RDS and all those crews get down for those games this year.
Don't forget TVA Spot. I'll tell you this.
Yes.
That line at Boston College, that has me kind of tempted to take in a Boston College game or two.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch those guys. And
let's make a note of that. Let's make a note of that, Grant. Maybe you and I'll hang out in Boston for a couple of days at some point.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can be talked into going to Boston, but...
Well, what's wrong? Yeah, you're kidding. Come on. Boston's a beautiful city.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is.
You've been before?
Actually, no.
You haven't? Boston's a beautiful. Grant,
Yeah.
Boston is a beautiful city.
I've heard that. I've heard it's great.
Yeah, no, it really is great, and I love the North End. It's their Little Italy and Hanover Street and stuff like that. And there's a lot more to it than that, of course. And there's
great sports town.
It's a great sports town. It's a great sports town. You want to know how much it pays to do sports radio out of Boston?
More?
Give me a figure that you think the morning man makes in Boston.
I don't know, 100 G's.
Morning radio in Boston? You make over $1 million.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what that's like, Tony.
Afternoon drive in Boston, you'll make over $1 million.
So they wouldn't hire you? You tried?
No, you know what? As much as I wouldn't, not yet anyway. Never say never, but up until now, I've never been remotely tempted to move out of Montreal.
I hear you.
Like I could have made a lot more money than I made. Working Toronto. You know what? If there was a job in Boston for me, I could have made a lot more there. You can make a lot more in Philadelphia. You can make a lot more in New York. Those are markets where, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, talk radio in those cities. You're paid a nice amount. Actually, in my opinion, you're paid an amount that you actually deserve.
Right.
When
it's not all about money, is it, Tony?
Well, in my case, clearly it was not. I'll tell you that right now.
Well,
but
me neither.
It was being passionate about something and loving it so much that you would do it for free. And probably the worst part in all of that is that your employer probably knew that you loved it so much and that you would do it for free. And that's why. But anyway.
Well.
So
scouting's the same way for me. So I feel you.
Yeah. So in Toronto, they don't make $1 million, but Toronto you would make a lot more than you would in Montreal. That's for sure, 100%. But anyway, I don't know where but anyway, that's what it is. All right. Okay. Why did I go there? Okay. What did Lane Hutson have to say?
Well, he's just really looking forward to this year. It's kind of cool. There's going to be three brothers, the Hutson brothers. Do you remember the show, the Hudson Brothers, the variety show back in the day in Canada with the D, Hudson Brothers?
No, I don't.
Just before your time. Anyways, there's the Hudson Brothers, Celebrinis. Macklin's brother is joining him, and then McCarthy, who was partner with Lane last year. His younger brother's joining. So there's three pairs of brothers going to be playing with BU this year, which is kind of cool. I was asking him if plans on the three pairs of them getting together and watching Big Brother together, or
is that a first? Three pairs of brothers?
Probably not, but I mean, I imagine it hasn't happened too often. And what's also cool is that Cole Hutson, is set to join BU next year. Now, if Lane decides to stick around for his sophomore year, there'll be three Hutson brothers playing all different ages, playing for the same college team. Now, that's another thing that I'm sure hasn't happened too often.
So Cole Hutson is scheduled to go. The early projections are first round. Is that it?
Yeah, I think he'll be a first rounder, but I mean, he's going to go to BU for at least 1 year.
Yeah.
So I was asking, Lane, if mom and dad said, "Hey, you got to stick around for 1 more year to, babysit your little brother, right?"
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. Like he's he's almost like a carbon copy of Lane. 5'9" defenseman that shakes and bakes and does everything. Set records at the last event there, the under 18s. So
yeah,
but he said, well, he's not playing. He's not going to give away what he's. I don't think he knows yet, right? I mean, if he breaks records, sets defenseman records this year, I can't see him coming back, even if. It would be kind of cool that the three brothers played together for 1 year in college. But the other thing too is
make it 3-0, by the way, for fans of CF Montreal. Pardon me, Grant, but it's Shaqiri. Yeah, okay, Shaqiri makes it. Shaqiri makes it 3-0. Well, I got one eye on the screen, but I got one eye on you. I can tell you that right now. Shaqiri makes it 3-0 for the Chicago Fire. Okay, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah. I kind of forget what I was saying, but anyways, move on.
Oh, geez. I'm sorry if I interrupted your train of thought there.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
It doesn't take much.
No, yeah. You know what? That happens to me too. No, but we're talking about Cole Hutson and the fact that, the early projection is that he's going to go in the first round. And what,
okay. Well, I mean, Marc-Antoine Godin talked to him a few weeks ago, and he was 163. He said,
"Okay,
weighed 163," and then at camp, Lane was 158. So I was asking him if he was on a diet. I mean, joking, obviously, but and he said his weight fluctuates a fair bit in the off season. Anywhere from 158 to 165. But I was asking him if, there aren't very many NHL defensemen that play at under 170. Like, not very many come in, right? And I was asking him if perhaps he was thinking of that he needs to get up to about 170 before he could play the pro game, and it sounded like he's comfortable at about 165, and that he thinks he'd be able to play. And I mean, we've seen it no matter what competition he plays. it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he's 165 pounds. I don't think. He's just he I was asking him about Luke Tuck got clocked by Struble last year.
Yeah, we saw that. Yeah.
His biggest hit, and then he hit him in the camp.
Yeah,
and it's funny that Struble and Tuck ended up being roommates at the camp, which Lane was telling me. But I asked him if he ever got clocked like Tuck did last year, and he says no. Like he's so aware out there, kind of like Gretzky. Gretzky wasn't much more than 170 pounds when he played in the WHA and led the league in scoring. At 17 years of age.
For a defenseman, Grant, who's going to have to fight off some bigger bodies, move players out of the front of the net. You, with your scouting background, talk to us about this. So let's just say you were part of a meeting tomorrow with Kent Hughes, and Lane Hutson shows up at camp, okay? NHL camp, all right? He's got a shot to make the team, but he's 170 pounds, and he's 5'9" defenseman, all right?
Yeah.
How concerned are you going to be? What are you going to bring up exactly to Kent?
Well, I don't, you just let him play. And I mean, if he shows that he can do it, and he puts up numbers and he's running the power play, and you find a spot for him on the team. I was asking him about I was asking Lane about, like, how do you move a big defenseman? What do? You can't move him in front of the net. What do you do to and he explained it pretty well. There's going to be some great quotes in there. I don't want to give it all away, I guess, because I'd like
okay, yeah, no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't, of course, because you wrote about it, yeah.
But get your stick in the right spot. Make sure that you lift his stick at the right time. Time when the shot's coming in, get your hip, get into his hips, knock him off balance at the right time. And he does all that stuff. Like, if you watch him close, he's not porous defensively by any means. So there's a lot to work with there, just because he's so smart. And I think it's that intelligence that will win the day for him, where I think that he'll be able to, obviously his offense is going to be such a key contribution to the team that you'll be able to put up with his lack of size, because he's just so intelligent, both defensively and offensively.
Yeah, but look, listen, size obviously kicks in when physicality kicks in. If there's no physicality, you don't have to worry about the size. Size kicks in when you have to try and clear to the front of the net. If you don't have to, it's not a problem. But let me ask you this. In terms of lightweight defensemen, how does that usually work in terms on their endurance? Do you see a parallel of a lightweight defenseman probably not having the same endurance and maybe wearing down faster than someone who's obviously bigger?
Yeah, for sure.
Was that for the dog, or what was that for exactly? Or was that for me?
What's that?
I saw you throw something there. Was that for the dog, or was that for me?
Yeah. Well, I was throwing it at the wife there, because she won't keep quiet.
Who, the dog?
No, the wife.
Oh, okay. No, the wife.
She's blabbing away.
Yeah, she loves you,
I'm
man.
Trying to do a podcast, so I threw my wallet over at her.
Why don't you bring her on the podcast?
Yeah, no, next time, Tony.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, speaking of defensemen, I saw a kid last week. Now he's young. Look, I'm not going to start saying that a 10-year-old is going to play in the National Hockey League because we don't know. They change, right? They go through, some players peak at different times and stuff like that and whatever. And there's so many things that can happen. But this player is on the right track. Let me tell you, if this player, Quincy Fontaine, did you see images of this kid by any chance? He was playing on that Montreal Canadiens team that won the Brick. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. No.
Oh, this kid is something else, Grant.
Is that right, eh?
Oh, this defenseman, Quincy Fontaine, is absolutely unbelievable.
Well, he's got the right name, Tony. That rolls off the tongue.
Absolutely.
Quincy Fontaine.
This kid is so good. And I think in the final game, which was a win versus Minnesota, I believe they won 7-4. I could be wrong. But I think in the last game, I think he played like 80% of the game. The kid never came off. The kid never came off. Really good. Anyway, I don't know if you're going to go out and you're going to start scouting 10-year-olds, Grant. I doubt you will. But
no,
if you happen to be in a rink one day and there's some 10-year-olds playing, remember this name, Quincy Fontaine. Really, really good. Hey, Dominic Ducharme's back in the National Hockey League.
No.
You didn't see that?
No, I didn't.
Dominic, well, it came up on the wire just a few hours ago, but Dominic Ducharme is the new assistant coach of the Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay.
No, but the LA Kings would have been a good guess because Mark Bergevin's there.
Well,
you would have thought that Chicago would have been a good guess because Luke Richardson is there. But Dominic Ducharme is the new assistant coach of the Vegas Golden Knights. And you know what, Grant? I know that everyone wants to be a coach, but if you end up making a nice career for yourself as an assistant coach or an associate coach at one point, living in Vegas, working in Vegas, pretty good team. Assistant coach, usually the pressure is not on them, unless, of course, they're responsible for a power play or a penalty kill and ends up being one of the worst in the league. At that point, their name comes up in not a very good fashion. But I think it's a good spot for him. And I think it's good that he comes back as an assistant coach, Grant.
Oh yeah, well I don't think he was a poor assistant coach at all. I think that's probably what he's, best suited for at the NHL level. I just, NHL coach, maybe not, but that doesn't mean you can't be a high caliber assistant coach in NHL. And there are maybe 70, 80 of those jobs. So that's pretty good. One of the top 120 coaching jobs in the NHL.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. I kind of felt bad earlier tonight because, like I said, when it was tweeted out by the Vegas Golden Knights that Dominic Ducharme was going to be joining their staff as an assistant coach, I got to tell you, he got a lot of doesn't communicate well, and Weber didn't respect him either, and you know what, he ruined Cole Caulfield, and the players wanted to play for Luke Richardson. They didn't want to play for him. There's a lot of that came up, but there was a challenge when it came to communication skills, for sure. He expressed himself in French a lot more, a lot better than he expressed himself in English. That could have been a challenge. The Cole Caulfield thing obviously didn't help, but and I'm not just saying this, but I think you said something that was pretty good. And that is, when all is said and done, that's probably his role in the National Hockey League. And if it is, you know what? It's nothing to spit at. Number two, though, let's be
for the Cup Finals.
But let's be for second chances too, though, right? I mean,
for sure.
He got his feet wet there at the National Hockey League level coaching. It was one team, and there's a lot of coaches that you probably would have thought would not have ended up being pretty good coaches after one experience that went sour. But it's like every other job in the world, right? The more you do it, the more practice you get, the better you're going to end up being at it.
Absolutely. And really, like the year before he got fired, he took team to the Cup Finals that nobody predicted would go there. So, maybe he wasn't a horrible head coach either. If he'd have got 5 years to, or got more time to straighten the ship out. But certainly, yeah, I mean, he's probably destined to be and I'm glad he got another assistant coaching job in the NHL, because I think, he was a decent one at the NHL level. And there's a big difference between an assistant coach and a head coach in the NHL. And there's been a lot of them that were great assistant coaches that just it didn't work when they became head coaches.
Yeah.
And so I bet he does a great job there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has an assistant coaching job in that, for the next 15 years in the NHL, and I'm happy for him.
He is a student of the game. 6 1/3 has a good point. Paul Maurice was laughed out of Toronto. They made him look like he was the worst coach ever. And this year he plays Toronto in the playoffs in round 2 after all the Toronto fans are outside Leaf Square, whatever it is, saying we want Florida. He put Sheldon Keefe and the Toronto Maple Leafs in his back pocket.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, no. Well, look at Bruce Cassidy. Gets fired by Boston, turns around and wins a cup. Vegas the next year.
Isn't that something, the way it worked out? I mean, Jim Montgomery takes over for Bruce Cassidy. Yeah. He's the best coach in the regular season, the best regular season record ever. Jack Adams Award.
Yeah.
But Cassidy ends up going to the cup final and wins the cup. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's coaching, they can get a lot of credit, they can get no credit. And I still think, they're not out there on the ice putting the puck in the net or stopping the puck. And, a lot of it is just luck and getting on a roll. And, I don't think there's any genius coaches out there, just like I don't think there's any genius scouts. It's you have good times and you have bad times. And, sometimes sometimes you end up being the champ and sometimes you don't.
This is a great point here by Jeffrey Lebowski, who says Kirk Muller is a great assistant coach, great associate coach, and he's a good coach, but maybe more so made to be an assistant coach. You could probably say the same thing about Larry Robinson, but mind you, Larry Robinson won a Stanley Cup as head coach of the New Jersey Devils. But for the most part, Larry was considered a better assistant coach than he was considered a head coach.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good point.
Okay. How many goals are the Canadians going to score next year? This is one of the major reasons why I got you on, because I think you did an exercise on this. So tell me, how many goals are the Canadians going to score next year?
Well, there's certainly some concerns there that they may not even be able to match last year's total, but I see them
they won't be able to match last year's totals?
Well, I mean, I've seen, they didn't go out and get Michkov, so, they can't score goals. But no, I think that they're going to score more goals than last year. And I think I did a conservative estimate just on, based on age and goals per game totals in the past.
Yeah.
And they're going to, I think they're going to score at least 10 more goals. And if everything goes well, they could score 30, 40 more goals than last year. And as long as the goals against can come down, I think they were minus 70 in goal differential last year. So if they can get it anywhere close to where it's close to zero, I don't know that they'll do it next year, but certainly if all the young talent keeps developing and progressing, and the young defensemen step up, I think they can be around a 500 team, I believe, next year. We'll see.
Okay, the breakdown. I don't know if you sent it to Agnello by chance. If you did, it'll come up in a second. Look at that. We have it. I'm telling you, with Agnello and Sammy and Juliana and Master Control, I have them surrounded by the best. Caulfield 35, Suzuki 25, Anderson 20, Doc 18, Newhook 18, Gallagher 15, Slav 13, Monahan 12, Raphael RV Pinar 12, Dvorak 8, Hoffman 8, Armia 7, Pizzetta 6, Evans 5, and the rest of the bench, the rest of the forwards 10. Matheson on defense 12, Gooley 7, Jackeye 6, Harris 5, Barron 4, Savard 3, Kovacevic 2, and the rest of the bench 2 for a goal total of 253. I'm going to take a look at, I want to keep this chart up, okay? Please keep it up for those who are watching on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Twitter Live. And by the way, if you're not following us on YouTube, please do so. The more subscribers we have, the happier we're going to be. That's number one. Number two, if you're going to listen to us on Google, Apple, or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. It's our way of feeling the love. And if you're watching us, like it, share it with your friends, and comment sick, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K. We're going to leave this chart up, but I'm going to tell you this, Grant. I'm going to take a look at this from a different angle. Grant, last year, the Canadiens scored 232 goals. They conceded 307. It was a differential of minus 75. Yeah. You said there are some that believe the Canadiens will score less goals than they did a year ago.
Okay, well, maybe just not more goals, I guess, is a better way of putting it.
Okay, so I'm going to say this, I would bet the house, and I don't want to lose the house. I would bet the house that the Canadiens will score more for sure for several reasons. But here's one reason right off the top of my head right away. The Canadiens had more man games lost due to injury last year than any team in the league.
Yeah.
They've replaced a couple of members of their sports science department, athletic therapist, and all that. They've replaced a couple of members. They brought in, put it this way, someone who was doing it with the New York Rangers for almost 30 years. And the Rangers traditionally have been one of the teams that has lost the least amount of players due to injury. So based on that alone, the Canadiens are scoring more than a year ago. Based on that alone.
Just the law of averages, Tony. Like the last 2 years, they led the league in man games lost. And, obviously the athletic or the medical department can't stop injuries from happening.
Yeah.
They're not out there getting in between the cross check and they're not cushioning the player from a big hit into the boards. There still going to be injuries happen, but there just seem to be so many misdiagnoses with the prior staff that hopefully that alone, but also just the law of averages tells you that it can't keep happening, like the bad luck of everyone getting injured. Like last year, it was just crazy. And a lot of these guys, like those numbers that I put up there are very conservative. Like that's not anybody having a tremendous career year other than like Newhook and Slavkovsky, who obviously are only going to get better given more opportunity and given their age. But, Caulfield was on pace to score 46 last year over 82 games. Every one of those numbers, I based it on just Montreal having average injury issues next year, where on average, the 23 players, that are on the roster miss 15 games. So you deduct 15 games from what you think their goals per game are going to be.
Yeah.
Based on what they've done in the past, their age, and all that, who they're going to play with. Yeah. And those are the low end numbers for each of them. Mm-hmm. So certainly, there's several players there that could score a lot more goals than that. And if that happens and these other guys hit those numbers, Montreal could score perhaps 270 plus. They do that based on last year's stats. They're going to be right in the middle of the pack in goals scored in the league next year. So the fact that it's such a young core that, past history tells you that these guys are only going to get better and better production. As long as they are just average injury wise next year, I think you're going to see a 20 to 40 goal jump in their offense.
A shout out to Murphy Clinic, an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer laser permanent laser hair removal, as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal Shop Angus, and the second on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're also opening up soon. In Quebec City, visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram at murphyclinic. All right. A lot of people watching, Grant, right now are like big-time Montreal Canadiens fans, all right? So I'd be willing to bet that they look at your numbers of 253 goals, and they're probably saying, oh, there's no way, a lot more than that. Caulfield's going to score more than the 35. Suzuki's going to score more than the 25. Duck's going to score more than the 18. Slavkovsky will score more than the 13. Raphael Harvey-Pinard will score more than the 12. Dvorak will score more than the 8. So will Hoffman, right? They're always going to give more numbers. That's just the way it is. Having said all of that, okay, so here's the deal. If this past season the Canadiens would have scored 253, they would have been 21st in the National Hockey League out of 32 teams. And when you're one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League, like bottom 5, if you actually end up being 21st in scoring out of 32, that's not bad. So now, let's just say the Canadiens are the 11th worst team in the National Hockey League next year. And they put up these numbers. Well, based on this year's numbers, this past season, it would be the 11th least amount of goals. It would kind of make sense. So although a lot of people are going to look at this and say, no, they're going to score way more, it's quite possible that they're going to score the amount that you're saying they're going to score, because this, once again, would be 21 out of 32 teams. Now, off the top of my head, I'll tell you this. If Caulfield's healthy, I'll bet the house that he's scoring more than 35. Yeah. He was on pace to score 46 this year.
Yeah. I'm just a little, I wonder about the shoulder surgery.
You're right. It's a good point. He's coming off shoulder surgery.
100%. And his bread and butter is a shot, right?
Yes.
Well, what do you use? You use your shoulders,
Big time.
That's the only concern I have there.
I'd say too that if Doc is a mainstay on that line, but that's we don't know if he will be. But let's just say Doc plays the year on that line, scoring more than 18.
Oh, for sure. And if Slavkovsky is there, he's scoring more than 13. If Anderson's there all year, there's no reason why he can't score 25 plus if he's healthy. He was on pace for, and I go into in depth with each player in the article. It's quite lengthy, and it goes into their points per game, goals per game.
Yeah.
How they ended the season. Like some guys were red hot, and even Harvey-Pinard, like 12 goals. Like he was on pace for 31 last year.
He was, but we also have to keep in mind that a lot of the players ended up getting more goals because other players were injured, and it created better opportunities for them. Should they be healthy next year, all of a sudden they're not getting power play time. All of a sudden they're not getting 18 minutes. They'll probably get 11 minutes, and they're not on the power play.
Exactly. And Newhook had 14 last year, but he's going to get more offensive opportunity this year, and he'll play with better offensive players than he did in the third line with Colorado too. So a lot depends on who ends up playing with Suzuki and Caulfield. And whoever that is, whether it's Doc or Anderson or Slavkovsky, the numbers that I posted there are very conservative, but I don't know who it's going to be. And that's why, I think that a conservative estimate is that they'll score 250 plus. And if the stars align right, who knows, they could get 270 plus and be right in the middle of the pack in goals for. If they can shore up the defense, they got 5 returning rookie defensemen. Presumably they're all going to be better next year. If they can trim the goals against by 20, they're going to be a goals differential right around 0, and that gets you in the playoff hunt at the very least. So, until late in the year. So it's not inconceivable that the Habs are an 80-plus point team, I don't think, next year. And a lot will depend on injuries and how much the younger players progress.
Yeah. Once again, let's bring up that chart if we can. All right. Evans 5, Pizzetta 6, Armia 7, Hoffman 8. That's a low number for Hoffman. What's
Yes, it is.
What's your thought process behind why you see him in the final year of his contract, where he's obviously going to want to get another contract, which will probably be the last contract of his NHL career, an opportunity for him to cash in one more time. Why do you think he's going to have probably, in terms of goals, his worst offensive season ever at a time when it's most important that he has his best?
Right. Well, age. If you look at his stats in the last 3 years, they've only declined. And I think opportunity, like I don't see a spot for him in the top 9. Maybe he does get it, but it'll be at the expense of somebody else if he does. I think he plays probably half the games. I don't see him being a regular.
Oh,
lineup.
wow. I disagree with you so much on this point.
Oh,
Please ask me why.
Well, I mean, who does he replace in the top 9, Tony?
I'm going to answer it another way, Grant. I'm going to answer it another way, okay? Allow me to do this.
I think he could go to the AHL even, or bought out.
Oh, whoa.
Lots of things.
Grant, they're going to want to trade this guy at the deadline.
Nobody's going to give him anything. They've got enough draft picks, Tony. It's that ship has sailed. They've tried to showcase him for the last 2 years and nobody wanted him. Why is it going to change this?
I'll tell you why.
Just because it's the end of his contract.
Well,
he's going to be 34. He's a defensive liability. He can't play in Montreal's top 9. How is he going to play in a playoff contender's top 9? I don't. You don't deter the growth of a young player.
Different atmosphere.
Shop a guy that might get you a 4th round draft pick it just doesn't make sense to me, Tony. They don't need another 4th round draft pick.
I understand, but the fact that he can't do well in Montreal, I mean, with that logic, Colorado wouldn't take a chance on Jonathan Drouin. But they are.
Did they trade for him? They signed him to like almost an entry-level contract.
You're
as a
right.
Free agent.
You're right about that. But when you say Hoffman's going to be 34, you're right. But the team that's going to acquire him, I'm not saying that they're going to hold on to him or extend this contract. I'm saying they're going to use him for a playoff push. And in the playoffs, there's no limit on the amount of players that you can have, right? So you get Hoffman, and he might be in your plans, he might not. But if somebody gets hurt, then all of a sudden he's on your power play. Look, only time will tell. And for sure, we're going to have the answer to this question come March 1st next year, Grant.
Right.
But I mean, look,
I don't even know if he'll be playing in the NHL at March 1st, but we'll see. We'll see.
Wow. They might as well buy him out already then.
Well, I don't know why they haven't at this point. A lot of guys got bought out that were better players than him, not 34 years old.
So let's finish with this. Mike Hoffman is not the kind of player the Canadians want for the kind of culture that they want to cultivate. We agree?
I agree.
Perfect. So then the fact that they've held on to him and they haven't bought him out leads me to believe what I'm believing, that they want to put him in a position to succeed. And by the way, if they put him in a position to succeed, if it hurts the team and they don't make the playoffs next season, I still don't think it's the end of the world for the Canadians, who don't necessarily still need to rebuild, but I don't think it's, no one's going to lose their job if they miss the playoffs next year.
Yeah.
The fact that he's not the type of player they want for their culture, and that they didn't buy him out and they held on to him, leads me to believe that they're going to try and put him in a position to succeed, to trade him at the deadline.
Yeah, well, it could be. I don't, he went from 36 goals to 29 to 17 to 15 to 14. And, he's a year older. He's not good defensively. I don't see him having a spot in the top 9. I don't think it makes sense to showcase him for the sake of maybe getting a third or fourth round draft pick at the draft deadline. Because can you see him getting more than that, Tony?
More than a second, no.
a second. Oh, I can't see anybody giving up a second-round draft pick for Mike Hoffman.
Well, I mean,
I'm sure. Well, I mean, they'd have got rid of him at the last trade deadline for a fifth if they could have. Nobody was offering anything for him. So why would now they turn around? He's a year older and he's probably not going to play regularly. I'd be surprised. The next trade deadline offer a second rounder for him. I don't see it happening.
You know, he would. The answer to this question, Grant, is it all depends how many goals he'll have at the deadline. And at the deadline, you know what? If he's way before that, if he's not playing or he's out of the lineup or he's in Laval, like you said, well, at that point they're not getting much. They're getting nothing for him. You're right. But what if Mike Hoffman? What if Mike Hoffman has 22 goals at the end of February?
Well, yeah. What if I discover the fountain of youth, Ponce de Leon? You know, there's always ifs out there. That's for sure.
The fountain of youth, my friend, is ginseng and Trebolis. And there's a vitamin called Ultimate Male Energy, my friend, which has a little bit of green tea extract in it too. And there's other things I take too, but I'm not going to give away all my secrets. Hey, this was fun. This was fun. He is Grant McCagg of Recruits and recruits.ca. Subscribe to his publication. He watches hundreds of games, he and his staff, and they'll give you scouting reports and they'll give you articles, and you can get everything and access to everything for under $40 a year. An interview earlier today with Lane Hutson and an article dropping on the amount of goals the Canadians will score and why, all of that and more. Thank you, Grant. You have a great night, my friend.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, there you have it, Grant McCagg. I, too, had a great night because it was my wife's birthday on the weekend, and we were on the East End tonight. I said, what do you want to do? And we have the sushi. Look at that beauty right there over at Restaurant Prima Luna. And there you go. Folks, if you've never been before, it's sushi, it's Szechuan, and it's fine Italian cuisine. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop because chances are if you go with a small group or a big group, you're going to find something on the menu that you'd really like to have. And they are in the East End at 7301 Henry Bourassa East and RDP. And I want to give them a shout out because they were very, very courteous tonight. The service was absolutely fantastic. And especially want to give them a shout out because Wednesday nights, it's one of the worst kept secrets in town is sushi night for, I believe, about $34 a person, unlimited sushi. It's a great spot. It's great sushi, and it is a great time. I want to thank all of you for watching tonight, the Sick Podcast. We went a little bit under an hour. We're looking at about 53 to 54 minutes. And there you go. Thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place, the Sick Podcast, weeknights at 10 p.m. Tell your friends about it. For Agnello and Sammy at Master Control, they're Cavallaro, and I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVie.tv. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.